Welcome, students. Since this is your first quiz, I wanted to do a review, a picture book review specifically. This is your first quiz, and this will help prepare you to take said quiz, and also review some of the stuff we went through quickly in class. So picture books. Remember, picture books are a format. What makes a picture book is the illustrations are of greater or equal importance to the words. It's based on format rather than content. What does that mean? It means picture books can be a variety of genres. You can have poetry picture books, contemporary realistic fiction picture books, fantastic literature picture books. They come in all different genres. The format itself is a picture book. There's a strong unity between text and art, artistic excellence regardless of medium or style. So one thing that picture books and graphic novels have together is they are both formats. Picture books and graphic novels are the only genres, so-called, you could put that in quotes, in children's and adolescent literature that are classified by format. They can be fantasy, historical fiction, science fiction, contemporary realistic fiction, and poetry. So both of them, it doesn't matter. Their genre is not dependent on their format. So their format and genre can be different. For instance, with The Arrival, whether you consider it a picture book or a graphic novel, could either be, is definitely fantasy, I would say, but it's also the format of picture book or graphic novel. And here's some other graphic novels. All other genres are classified by content. The visual nature of these books is especially appealing to many students. So as you can see, there's Mouse, which is usually required reading, if not in high school, college. It was the first graphic novel to win a Pulitzer, actually. There's Coraline, there's Persepolis, there's A Wrinkle in Time. A lot of books actually, they'll start out, Madeleine L'Engle wrote A Wrinkle in Time, and then somebody adapted it into a graphic novel, which we'll talk about more when we get to graphic novels. Graphic novels also have their own terminology, but as you'll see when we go over graphic novels, a lot of them, it shares a lot with picture books. For instance, there's full bleed, when the art is allowed to run to the edges of each page rather than having a white border. Gutters, the space between the panels. There's also, floating cutout, which is cutout's also a word that we use. So it carries a lot of the same kind of terminology, and a lot of people will use graphic novel terminology with picture books and picture book terminology with graphic novels. And that's something we'll talk more about when we get into graphic novels. So let's review picture books. So we're going to be looking at artistic excellence here. First, let's review some of the terminology. So the verso. The verso is the left-hand side of the page opening or double page spread. Recto is the right-hand side of the page opening of the double page spread. The way I remember it is recto right. So with a book, there's usually a dust jacket, which you can actually take off, and sometimes if you take the dust jacket off, you'll get a different image that's actually on the dust jacket. Then the spine is the what holds the book together, and trim size is how large the book is. And if you're like me, you probably have a bunch of big books that don't fit with all your other books in your bookshelf. So you have to have a special book, shelf that's higher than the rest, so you can fit those big trim size books. So another more picture book terminology is so the front matter, which actually, due to postmodern picture books, doesn't have to be in the front, but it still carries that connotation, or it still carries that, sorry about that, it still, for some reason, kept that name, is the actual, where it writes the copyright and, the publishing information and all that. The dedication page could be anywhere in the book. Sometimes in the back, sometimes it's in the front, but it's a dedication page. The flap is actually when you open the book and there's on the dust jacket that little flap that usually tells you what the author why they wrote the book, or if it tells you a summary of the book, that's the flap. The case is the hard cover of the book, and the face down is when you open the book, and sometimes there are images and sometimes there aren't, but as soon as you open it, it's on the inside cover of the book, pasted down literally. Sometimes it can be like just a color, or other times it can be, various different kinds of images. And then what would be to the left of that would be the flyleaf, and it's usually like a page that the reason called flyleaf, it's opposite from the paste down, and it can fly. It can be moved around. So we'll talk about this a little bit more later. So these are all also Picturebook terminology: half title page, opening, cutout, frame, and end pages. Now, there's the sheet that you have on Picturebook terminology. I very much recommend that you use that when you take the quiz. So here we go. Double page full bleed. Why is this a double page full bleed? Well, it goes all the way to the corner, right? So it's a full bleed. There's no frame. Why is it double page? It's on both pages. So when you open the book, it's double page. And right in the middle of it is the gutter. Right in the middle of the little boy's face runs the gutter, which is, how it's bound. It's into the spine. So I hope that's helpful. So now I'm quickly going to go through size, shape, color, line, and angles. So lines define objects. Circular lines can give a sense of warmth. Diagonal lines can give a suggestion of urgency. Also, lines can be used to show movement, like the bunny that's throwing all the way in the right-hand corner. And there's space. Space can be used in a variety of ways. The way that in the giving tree, the words are put on the page to mimic the leaves and how much open space there is, or how close and kind of cluttered Little Red Riding Hood looks here with Mr. Wolf, giving you a kind of foreboding sense. So, and shapes. Shape. So here we have millions of cats and the way it's shaped. Keeps going back. Sorry, guys. And it's using circular kind of shape. And then we go to artistic elements in terms of color: hue, value, saturation. The mood of the picture can be changed using different hues, saturations. So if you look at Goodnight Moon, the color palette you would say used here could have a soothing kind of feeling. And also, if you start at the beginning of Goodnight Moon and you end at the beginning of Goodnight Moon, you see that the colors are getting less saturated and vibrant, almost kind of dull. And then we get to something like When Sophie Gets Angry, where the colors are really vibrant, really saturated, really catching your attention because it wants to show her inner anger, which is exemplified in the colors. Then we have something like Smoky Night, which is about the LA riots, and the blue tones that are used throughout it. And it's kind of like using the blue tones to emphasize a kind of sadness, mourning. A lot can be getting out of that. And then we have something like Mr. Grumpy's Outing, and you see this kind of pastel use of color. And what does that mean? It could mean mean something like childhood. What does it remind you of? Always think about that, because when students, especially when they're younger, are looking at picture books, a lot of people are like, well, they can't read the words, so it doesn't matter. But they read the pictures, and they can read the feelings on the pictures. And that's often conveyed through the illustrations and through the color use. Then we have texture. So Where the Wild Things Are. Maurice Sendak is really well known for using texture in terms of doing a lot of scratching to make the fur look real, to make the to make the trees look real, almost like 3D-ish. And point of view, perspective. Now remember, with the artistic elements, there's a point of view, perspective, and then with narrative elements or literary elements, there's also point of view and perspective. And often they can work together, or sometimes they don't work together. But they're two different things. If someone says this is in first person, that means that the book is written from the point of view of a first person, or from the author's point of view. If someone's saying this book is in third person, it's written from the point of view that's not the author. So it has to do with the point of view of the author of who wrote the book. This is the point of view perspective of pictures and how pictures are telling their own story. So we get here the man who walked between the towers. It's a Caldecott winner. So the perspective is he's looking down, right? And what does that mean? So it's a high angle shot, kind of. And what could that possibly mean in terms of, why shoot it this way, or why use this perspective? To me, because I'm afraid of heights, that's the most terrifying thing I could ever think of. So that's why I would do it. And then here we have another way. So Sophie is looking up at the tree. So if she's looking up at the tree, and a lot of people will use cinematic terms or graphic novel terms. So she's looking up at the tree, and the tree is almost growing diagonally. You would say this is a low angle shot. A lot of people will use low angle shots to make items and people look larger than life. If you ever use if you ever do any kind of Snapchat or take selfies and you get a low angle, you're like, oh, my face looks weird. Well, it's giving you that perspective of your face probably being wider and kind of more foreboding. So it's the same instance in this particular thing, is that it's painted that way because it wants to give you that sense that this tree is growing out of the page and it's much larger than Sophie and it's intimidating. So here we're going to get into how style affects story. So, we have two Little Riding Hoods, but which one would you read? Which one looks scarier? Which one looks funner? So we'll talk more about style. So we're going to talk about representational, cartoon, surrealistic, impressionistic, and folk art. Realism, representational. Realistic or representational art portrays the world with faithful attention to lifelike detail. It is particularly suited to illustrate realistic stories with serious content or themes. So here we have something from Chris Van Allsburg that would be called representational. Now, what you have to take this with is a grain of salt. There, in terms of the art world, there are far more sophisticated terms to use, because you wouldn't necessarily say this is a realistic drawing of a little boy. I mean, Van Allsburg definitely has a style to him. He definitely has his own way of drawing things, and it wouldn't necessarily be considered representational. But we consider it representational because he's within the box of he's drawing a boy, the boy looks like a boy, he's not a cartoon, so it's representational. Here's another version of representational. So you see it's a chicken, it's not a cartoon chicken, and it's very, very fine painted, so representational. Then there's cartoon art or outline art. Cartoons consist of exaggerated characteristics or caricatures that emphasize emotion and movement. They possess no subtlety but are simple and straightforward. They are often chosen to illuminate humorous stories, nonsense, comical satire. So here you see that there is no goal of trying to represent reality. You're taking your take on reality, and you can see why it's sometimes called outline art when you see Let the Pigeon Drive the Bus, because the outline's the major thing that draws you. But then when you see Hey David, which is on the opposite side of the page, you see that it's not just a little boy, but it's a little boy with jagged teeth and jagged ways of looking, and so it's a caricature. Then we have Impressionism. Impressionism art depicts natural appearances of objects by giving visual impressions with an emphasis on light. Color is most distinctive feature of this style, especially the interplay of color and light, often created with splashes, speckles, or dots of paint. The effect is dreamlike, sometimes romantic or magical. It also evokes a quiet, pensive mood. So Impressionism in the art world, especially when it comes on pointillism, if you see the painting in the corner, if you see this painting far away, it just looks like a bunch of people hanging out like on a lawn. But then when you get up close, you see it's all a bunch of dots. And what ends up making the illusion of what's going on is the way that light has been incorporated into those dots. So Impressionism is very much focused on how light shapes the object or shapes what is trying to be conveyed. So here we can see it's very, the light is very important here. You could also use the phrase painterly with describing this picture book art. But you can see how important the light is for telling the story. You can see how the light hits the bridge, and how the sky is, and how the light is hitting the girl. And without these little tiny things, you wouldn't really be able to tell the difference of the various objects. But Impressionism is, there's you could also say painterly if you're not sure it's Impressionism. Painterly is a adjective that's usually used to describe picture book art that literally looks like it is a painting and was painted rather than drawn or computerized. Here's another great example of Impressionism. The light is so important. Would we know that was water unless the use of white in the water and the way it mirrors the boat and the way the shadow is used? Would we even know? And definitely look at the background. You can see a little bit of pointillism going there. I mean, it looks like it could be a green blob, but then when he's using shades of those colors, how he's using it to color and make it look like it's foliage. Surrealism. Surrealistic art often presents incongruous dream and fantasy images. It creates unnatural juxtapositions and bizarre incongruities. Sorry, guys. The expressionist and the impressionist make us feel, but the surrealist makes us think. It is suited to strange, unrealistic, or humorous stories. So I often get the question, how do you know the difference between surrealism and Impressionism? Well, right here. It makes you think. Also, Impressionism, extremely painterly and very, very dependent on light. Not so much with surreal. Like, for instance, this could have very well been done on a computer graphically. It's not painterly at all, but it's showing, a classic kind of Magritte-esque. If anyone knows who's Magritte, he was the guy that drew the apple in front of the face with the clouds and everything. But it's a monkey that's floating in a sofa over the ocean. It's surrealism. Also, there's the Wordless Picture Book by David Weisner, and he does a lot of wordless picture books where there are frogs that are floating on leaf pads. Often you'll find a lot of fantasy and science fiction books do surrealism because they're using fantastical concepts. And when something's fantastic, it goes surreal. It goes beyond reality. So then we have folk art. Folk art is associated with a specific cultural or social group and is reminiscent of the style prevalent at the time the story events occurred. It is usually decorative in nature, providing ornamental for everyday utilitarian objects. Since it's culturally specific, folk art is favored in illustrating folk tales. So if something, usually, I'm not going to say always, because sometimes folk artists will use representational, but a lot of the time, folk art picture books, in genre at least, will try to use the artistic style that complements the story. So Why Mosquitoes Buzz in People's Ears is going to use a style that complements the African story, so they're going to use African art, which would be folk art. Joseph's had a little coat. So this is a story with linked to Jewish heritage, and they're using a kind of collage-oriented art that pays homage to the folk art of those of Jewish heritage. So it's considered folk art. Great. So there's one more artistic style we're going to go over, which is really hard sometimes to identify, but it's called naive art. So it's characterized by a childlike simplicity in its subject matter and technique, and a flattened perspective with vivid color frontal view. Technically unsophisticated, but marked by artists' clear vision and emotions. You can often get it confused with folk art, but it's a very specific kind of art that's used, that uses, this simplicity or minimalism for, as a stylistic choice, not to complement a folk art story. Then we have abstract art. You'll see abstract art used in like postmodern picture books, and I think I have an abstract art ABC concept book, but I'm not exactly sure. Just to review, a concept book, remember, is something that's really simple. It's what you give to 3 or 4-year-olds to learn their colors, their numbers, those sorts of things. So that's what a concept book is. So it would be considered nonfiction, but it's concept because the whole concept is like learning numbers, learning about animals, or like learning the alphabet. So that's what a concept book is. And I have seen abstract art concept books. So text-picture relationship. Text inspires the pictures. Snappy dialogue drives the narrative. Illustrations, they move the story forward. They engage the reader. Picture books constitute an art form that has become increasingly sophisticated. Understanding the artist's techniques and style can enrich our appreciation of the work as adults and help us to make wise book selections for children. Reading good picture books can foster in children an actuality of vision and artistic sensitivity. So I just wanted to end on The Arrival, which you guys are going to be reading during Fantastic Literature Week. And I want you to think about whether The Arrival is a picture book or a graphic novel, and what genre would you include it? Not just the literary genre, but what about the stylistic? So I also wanted to talk a little bit about media. Oh, here's another perspective drawing. So it's showing a little guy that's like really short, on a big wall. So you can get the perspective of how small he is and how large everybody else is. So media is what the person decides to use to make the art. As I had said earlier, there's painterly. So, they might use acrylic or oil to get that kind of painterly look, or the media might be they're using computer graphics, some sort of graphic design oriented stuff. There's also, this looks like it might have been done with watercolor. That's also a medium. This looks like a scratch board, possibly some sort of printmaking. But that's the media. Technique is also, can be considered. A scratchboard would be, could be technique too. But they're one within the same pretty much in terms of describing. So I'm trying to see. So with cartoon, did the person illustrate this with ink or was it computer? So this definitely looks like it's with ink and some sort of paint, maybe like paint. But it definitely looks drawn, illustrated, not painted. Again, this could be both in terms of it being drawn and watercolor. So I just wanted to briefly go over that. I hope this was helpful. And good luck on your quiz.